So like I said during the opener today, what we're going to be looking at now is problems where we have something like a survey. It doesn't necessarily have to be a survey, but we're going to use a survey as our example here. And we're going to be looking at the percent of a population. Now, when I say the word population, what do you think of?
People census.
It's the number of people. You might take a census to find the population. Usually when you think of population, you think of how many people live in like a country or maybe a city or something like that, right? But we could say the population of this classroom, and that would just be the number of people in the classroom. We could say the population of the school, and that would be the number of people that go to school here. So population is just a count of people. It doesn't have to be the count of people in a country. It doesn't have to be the count of people in a city or a state. But it could be the number of people in any space. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about the percentage of people in a survey that say certain things. So to do that, we're going to start by taking a survey in this class. And here are your options. Let's see how close I was in the opener here. So the question is going to be, what is your favorite sport? And you only have 3 options, so you have to pick one of these 3. You don't get to say some other sport. So I want you to choose right now, and everybody's going to vote here. I want you to choose what is your favorite sport between basketball, volleyball, and tennis. But on your notes here, I want you to just write down how many there were total. So we had 13 people say they like basketball the best. We had 4 people say they like volleyball the best. And 2 people that said they like tennis the best. So here's our goal. Here's what we want to do. When we take a survey, we usually don't want to say 13 people like basketball the best. Because we don't know how many people we asked, right? So when we do a survey, usually what we want to say is a certain percentage of people like basketball the best. So would we say 13% of people in this room like basketball the best? No, it's not 13%, right? So the percent is going to tell us that if there were 100 people in here, about how many would have said basketball. And I think the percent is going to be a lot higher than 13, isn't it? Right. All right, so what do we do to figure out what percent of people said that basketball is their favorite? To figure out the percentage of people that said basketball is their favorite, we first need to know how many people we asked total. So we need to figure out how many people there were in the survey so we can figure out what percentage of people said that basketball was their favorite. So go ahead and do that real quick. What's 13 plus 4 plus 2? 19. So we know that there were 19 people total. And now this helps us because we know that 13 out of 19 said that basketball is their favorite. Sorry, I had those in the wrong places. Go ahead and write the number of responses. That should be the number of people that said each answer. All right, so 13 out of 19 said that basketball is their favorite sport. So how can we figure out what that is as a percent? What do we do? There's a hint in the chart that I gave you. Yeah, we're going to divide because when we say 13 out of 19, we can write that as a fraction like this, right? So for each one of these, we can write the fraction of responses as a number out of 19. So 13 out of 19 said basketball is their favorite. 4 out of 19 said that volleyball is their favorite, including Nate. 2 out of 19 said that tennis is their favorite. So we actually did this in our opener already, right? We want to change each one of these fractions to a percent. So let's do this. Let's round this to the nearest hundredth of a percent like we did in our opener. And so just type it into your calculator. To change a fraction to a percent, we do 13 divided by 19, and then we multiply by 100. Help me out here as you go. What is 13 divided by 19 times 100, rounded to the nearest hundredth? You guys agree with Aaron? All right, how about 4 out of 19? What do we get? What is it? 21 point.
Wouldn't that be it? Like, you can't fit a 0 in that game.
21 point. Yeah, you can do that. So 0.5. 21.05%. And then 2 out of 19. it going to be 10.52 or 10.53?
10.5.
Rounded is the 3.
It's going to be 3. Okay, so when we rounded, that 2 is going to go up to 3, right? So we get 10.53%.
Would you round it for again?
So what we've done here is we've figured out if 100 people took this survey and they answered about the same way as you guys in this class did, then 68 out of those 100 would have said that basketball is their favorite. 21 out of 100 would have said that volleyball is their favorite, and 10 out of 100, roughly, would have said that tennis is their favorite. Now, obviously, I'm ignoring these percentages here when I say that, but you should get about those numbers. If the people in that group of 100 answered the same way that you guys did in here. So let me ask one more question before we move on to the next part here. How could I check to make sure that my answers here for my percentages make sense? Yeah, why should they add up to 100%? So let me just go through this again. Let's say that we ask 100 people. 68 people said that basketball is their favorite. 21 say that volleyball is their favorite. And we'll say 11. We'll round up to 11. 11 people said that tennis is their favorite. How many people total, or how many answers total should I have out of 100? I should have 100, right? So if I add all of those up, go ahead and do that right now. Type them into your calculator. 68.42, 21.05, 10.53. They should add up to 100, or at least really close to 100. Since we're rounding these answers here, we might actually get a number that's like 100.01 or 99.99. You might get something that's a little bit off, but it should be really, really close. What do we get when we add them up? You get 100 even, right? So if we add all those up, you should get 100.00 or just 100. What we're doing here is we're calculating the percentage of responses in a survey when we know the number of responses. So in order to calculate the percentage of responses for each choice, we're going to do what? What did we do here? First, we wrote the number of responses as a fraction. So we're going to write it as a fraction. And in that fraction, what goes on top? What goes on top? Okay, with the number of responses in the numerator. I'm going to abbreviate number with a number sign. You can do that too if you want. On top. And what goes on the bottom? The total number of we'll say people surveyed. So the total number of people on the bottom. Once we write that fraction, then what do we do? So we have it as a fraction, then we change it to a percent. So then we change it to a percent. And we know how to do that, right? I won't write this down because you have it written in your notes somewhere else. So we change the fraction to a percent, and we do that by dividing the top by the bottom and then multiplying by 100. And then we want to make sure that we round correctly, round however it is asked in the problem. Let's look at this survey from a different perspective. Let's say that somebody comes to you and says, I surveyed 20 people. That's why I have the 20 down here. So I surveyed 20 people, and out of those 20 people, 40% say they like math class the best, 50% say they like PE the best, and 10% say they like their English class the best. What we want to figure out then is how many people gave each response. Because we couldn't say that 40 people said they like math the best because we only asked 20, right? So how do we figure out how many people said they like math the best? How do we figure out what number goes in here? So to figure out how many people actually said that math is their favorite, we want to figure out what 40% of 20 is. And to figure out how many people actually said that PE is their favorite, we want to know what 50% of 40 is, or of 20 is. Sorry. And to figure out how many people actually said English was their favorite, we want to know what 10% of 20 is. So let's go ahead and do all of those, just like we did in the opener today. We can figure this out by doing what? What does of mean? It means multiply, right? So we're going to do 40% times 20, we're going to do 50% times 20, and we're going to do 10% times 20. Go ahead and do those real quick on your own. For this type of problem, the work you need to show, you could just write 40% times 20 to show how you're getting your answer, and 50% times 20. Or you could change these percentages to a decimal right away. That would be okay too. So if you wrote 0.4 times 20, 0.5 times 20, 0.1 times 20, we would know what you mean by that also. What do we get when we multiply 40% times 20? 8? All right, so we should get 8 when we multiply 40% times 20. So 8 people said that math was their favorite class. What do we get when we multiply 50% times 20? 10, okay. And what do we get when we multiply 10% times 20? 2. All right. Now, how could I check to make sure these answers make sense? The 8, the 10, and the 2. Well, we could do that. We'll get to that in a second. But how many people did we ask total? How many? 20, right? Should we check to make sure that we got 20 responses total? Yeah, it would be a good idea here to check to make sure that all of these add up to 20. So what is 8 plus 10 plus 2? 20. Okay, good. So down here, you don't have to write this down, but we could check to make sure that 8 plus 10 plus 2 gives us the total number of responses. Now, another way to check this, and you don't have to go all the way, but you do need to write the fractions. The fraction of responses, I want you to write with the number of responses divided by the total number of responses. And so in this box right here, what should we write as the fraction? 8 out of 20. What should I write in this one? 10 out of 20. And what should I write in this one? 2 out of 20. Now this is one case where we don't want to reduce our fractions. Why would I not want to reduce my fractions here? What does this number tell me that 2 out of 5 does not tell me? Why would I not want to write this as, say, 2 over 5 here? Sorry about that. So the 8 over 20 tells us that 8 people said math is their favorite out of 20 people. The 2 out of 5 doesn't tell me that. It doesn't tell me how many people actually said math. It doesn't tell me how many people we actually surveyed. So the 8 out of 20 gives us more information than the 2 out of 5 does. All right, so we're not going to write this. We don't want that. We'll leave it as 8 out of 20. Now what we could do to check our answers again is to do 8 divided by 20 times 100 and make sure we get that percent. So that would be a good way to check your answers to see if you got the right answer. All right, last one. So what we're doing here, we want to write this down first before we do our last example. In order to calculate the number of responses for each choice, this one's a little bit easier. Since we have a percentage of a population, we can just do what? What did we do? Well, we add, subtract, multiply, divide. We multiplied, right? So we multiplied the percent of responses by the total number of people. And that's it. All right, so we've got one more for you. A new survey. What is your favorite food? Be sure you write down the survey question. And so people were given 3 options as their favorite food. They were given pizza, ice cream, and hamburgers as their choices for their favorite. 29% of the people said that pizza was their favorite. 55% said that ice cream was their favorite, and 16% said that hamburgers were their favorite. Now, I want you to notice that there were 58 people surveyed. Go ahead and start filling out this chart, and you're going to see that we're going to run into a small problem here that we can fix fairly easily. But start filling this out the way we did before, and try to find the number of people out of the 58 that said pizza was their favorite, that said ice cream was their favorite, and that said hamburgers were their favorite. All right, so how do I compute the number of responses for pizza here? How do I figure out how many people said pizza was their favorite? So we want to know what 29% of 58 is. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 58. Or we could do 0.29 times 58. You could write that. Or you could do 29% times 58. Any one of these would be okay to show how you got that. So you can write any one of these, 29% of 58, 0.29 times 58, 29% times 58. Any one of those would be okay for your work. But you need to show how you're getting it. And we type that into our calculator, and what do we end up getting? Going to get a decimal, right? So Aaron, what do we get? 17 point what? So we get about 16.82 here. Now, does it make sense to say 16.82 people? How many people is 16.82 people? How do you get 0.82 of a person? You can't, right? So 16.82 doesn't make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to round to the nearest person. And so that would be how many people, Aaron? 17. So 17 people, according to the math we did, 17 people said that pizza was their favorite out of the 58. All right, for the next one. Okay, Aaron, what do I write for my work here? Okay, so we could write 55% of 58. And we type that into our calculator. 55 divided by 100 times 58, and what do we get?
Oh, I didn't do that. I had multiple.
Okay, and how did you get? What'd you get?
3,199.
So we get 31.9, and we want to round to the nearest person. So what's that going to be, Aaron?
Oh, 32.
That would be 32 people.
You still could have got 32 out of it.
Yep. And then for hamburgers, I'm going to just show my work a little bit different way here. I'm going to do 0.16 times 58, because we could do it that way also. You can choose how you want to write that in there, but you do need to show your work. And if we do 0.16 times 58, what do we get, Gabrielle? So 9.28, that's going to round to what? Should just be 9, right? Because the 10th place is going to be the 2, and so that's going to keep it the same. So now to check, to make sure we did it right, we could do a few different things. First of all, what's 17 plus 32 plus 9? Type that into your calculator real quick. What do you get? 58. Cyan, go ahead. So the first one we get 17 out of 58, and then 32 out of 58, and 9 out of 58. And what we can do with this is we can type these into our calculator and make sure that we get these percentages. So if we type 17 divided by 58 in our calculator, we should get something that's going to round to 29%. If we type 32 divided by 58 in our calculator, we should get something that rounds to 55%, and so on.